Good morning and welcome to Odoo Live, Community Manager here at Odoo San Francisco. Thank you once again for joining us. Today I'm joined by Richard Shaw, one of our business advisors and resident accounting expert, to answer your questions in today's accounting AMA. So thank you for joining us, Richard.
My pleasure. Thank you, Noel.
As always, questions and comments in the chat. We will answer them. Well, since this is an AMA, we'll answer them as best we can as they come in. However, if we cannot answer your question here today live, you can always send us an email. We are at webinars@odoo.com. If you would like to get in touch with Richard directly, Richard, what is your email address?
My email is rsh@odoo.com.
Excellent. And as always, if you're an existing Odoo customer, we always recommend reaching out to your account manager, as he or she will probably be best prepared to happy. But with all that being said, I guess go ahead and take it away, Richard. We're going to wait for some questions to start rolling in.
All right. When we get some questions, I'll start answering. But until then, I can just go through a very brief guided tour here. What's going on here? 1 second.
F11, I guess.
Yes, so yeah.
Full screen.
What's going on now? Looks like okay. So just as a brief tour of accounting until we get some good questions. The first thing you see here is your main dashboard for your accounting. This is your bread and butter. Odoo will prompt you to guide you on how to set up the system for the first time. You have your general company information, your street address, location, etc. So this actually helps set up your report headers, so you have your correct information there. Then set up your bank accounts. Setting up a bank account will also create journals, which you see here. And these journals we can go into more detail a little bit later. And it will also allow you to connect with your bank. All right, first question from John. How can I set up Odoo to do WIP accounting? So first and foremost, you're going to want to make sure you have your chart of accounts set up. So you're going to have, of course, your stock valuation account specified for the main inventory you hold. You also have a component inventory if you wish, and then naturally a WIP account. Let me just create one right now. Duplicate this bad boy, and we're going to call this WIP. So now we have a work in progress account. So for those of you who are not familiar with the work in progress account, essentially, as a manufacturer, you have your raw components, and then you're going to throw all those raw components into a box, shake it up, and produce a finished good. Now, sometimes that shaking of the box takes time, weeks, months maybe, depending on how big of a product you're manufacturing. And so you're going to put value of those products into a work in progress account, transitory. It's still an asset, you still own it, so you do want to report on it. And it's a current asset type. And you will see it in the balance sheet right underneath your fixed assets, your other valuables you hold on hand. Now, one thing you need to do is under the inventory application, you need to turn on locations. The reason for turning on locations is because you're going to have specific locations that do have accounting impact. So we can type locations and save that. So essentially what's going to happen is when you have automated accounting turned on, and I'll show you where that you need to turn that on first because it's crucial. So we go to product categories, we'll do our sellable products. You need to first turn on your costing method, whatever you want. Standard will be based off of the product cost on the product form. First in, first out, as you buy and sell, Odoo will keep track of what came in first, what came in last, and the cost of goods associated with the first item that came in will be the one that you ship out. And then, of course, average cost, averaging everything together. And automated. WIP, work in progress, will not be hit unless automated is specified. Because what that does is every time an inventory movement is done, receiving inventory, shipping inventory, but also some internal movements for work in progress, a journal entry will be generated, accounting entries will be generated. And then, of course, here you specify your profit and loss accounts here and your balance sheet accounts here. So now that that's enabled, essentially, we'll also have to go to the product locations, and there's a very good reason for that. On the locations, you see what's internal. These are, of course, your warehouse, the building, the rows, the aisles, the bins, you name it. However, there's also some non-internal locations that are relevant to you. Of course, we have our partner locations, customers, and vendors. But more importantly, if we scroll to the bottom, there are virtual locations. Intercompany transit for shipping products between warehouse 1 to warehouse 2. Inventory adjustments when you need to just do your audits every now and again, or your beginning inventory. Your procurements, this is procuring obviously. Production, manufacturing location. And of course, scrapped when you toss things out. Now, the production location will have some accounting information here. So essentially what you're going to want to do is put the WIP account here. The reason for this is you're telling Odoo when an inventory move happens, right, which is going to be a balance sheet account impact, what account to hit. If you don't specify WIP in this situation, what's going to happen, and it's not going to be ideal, is Odoo is going to use these accounts here, stock item received and stock item delivered. What's really relevant about these two accounts, and they're more akin to another name that you might have heard of, inventory received but not invoiced or billed, or inventory shipped but not invoiced. These are akin. Those are very similar. They're very transitory accounts. So whenever you receive inventory, you're going to hit this stock item account. When you get invoiced for that you received, you're going to hit that again, reducing it to 0. And the same with the output account when you deliver products. So whenever you do an inventory move for manufacturing, Odoo is throwing inventory out of your inventory, which is throwing it into the box, shake it up, and then you pull out the finished good, which is bringing inventory back in, and which Odoo then behaves very similarly to that when you receive products from a vendor or ship to a customer. And that's why Odoo defaults to those two types of accounts. So to override it, that's where on the location itself, you specify the products here, the accounts there. So that means, assuming we have a product set up for it, let's see if we have a product for bill of material. Let's see, pick any of them really. So for instance, a desk combination, you would want to turn on automated, specify the account you want here, specify the accounts there. Now the bill of material products as well. And so when you create a manufacturing order, create the work orders, you process everything, check availability. What's going to happen is as you go, I'm just going to force reserve it. Leave that as is. Lock. Unlock one more time real quickly. Just put this value here. Check availability. Keep going. Actually, put this here as well one more time. Sorry. What happens is when you are producing and manufacturing something, you can process something. Check availability. I guess they want me to have it on hand. So you go through the work orders, you produce it all, start working, done, this work is done. So going back to the manufacturing order, you have a mark as done. Now also, I think I need to go to developer mode real quickly because next to that produce or mark as done, there is a post inventory button. That is what you're going to want to do for long-term manufacturing processes. So that way you can post the inventory that you have completed, the post inventory that you have completed, and post inventory that you have not completed. And that will put product into work in progress. And then the rest will be taken out when you mark as done, which will then increase the inventory of your finished goods. So we can take a look at the journal entries, assuming I did everything correctly. I did this on the fly, so there's a chance I didn't. Let's see. There you go, here you have it. So WIP is hit, debited or credited according to the product specification, the cost of the product, and then all the costs of the finished components will be moved into the finished good, and you'll have a good balanced journal entry. If you have any other questions about that, you want me to go in more detail, email me, rsh@odoo.com. Next question, company budgets. Great. So we do have budgeting in Odoo. which has changed a bit and for good in version 12. I don't know what's going to happen for version 13, but essentially you're going to create a budget, budgetary positions, etc. So I'll show you this specifically as this loads. So you're going to specify different budgeting groups, what accounts you want to hit, what analytic accounts you want to use. The biggest change from version 11 to 12 is the need to, they remove the need to have an analytic account specified on a budget. I'll show you what I mean. So here you have this budget, optimistic. You can choose to create a budgetary position or not. It's not required, or you can specify an analytic account. What's nice about the budgetary positions is you specify a name. Let's just do income. Add a line here, and what you're adding here are all the income accounts or whatever account you want to be measured. So Odoo will specify product sales, specify that. So every time you hit that account, it's going to apply into this budget. And I created an administrative analytic account. And so first and foremost, you pick a name, you pick a time period. So either you can have a longer or shorter, however you want. But you'll note that the whole budget has a time period, in this case a whole year, 2020, but you also have intermediate budgets, monthly budgets you see here. So these cannot exceed beyond the bound of the master budget, or the higher level, but can be within the bounds internally, so the 1 month. And then here you specify what the planned amount is. If it's an income, it's going to be positive. If it's an expense, it's going to be negative. And so what happens as you hit the transactions, and again, there's the financial account from the chart of accounts, you can choose right here, but you also have the analytic accounts. And what an analytic account is, it's going to be similar to what you have in QuickBooks class, where you can tag in a transaction into that account specifically. And I'll show you that with this here. We have the administrative account here for the analytic account. And I'm just actually going to remove this altogether. It's administrative, so negative 35K, so expenses. Add a line. I'm going to do the income one. And I don't need an analytic account there. It's no longer required. In version 11 prior, you did need that. Specify the time period, the amount. So the income, I'm going to budget for 50K. So now we have a budget in place. Save that. Let's confirm. So what you have here is the analytic account that is specified. When you hit this account, it applies to this budget. You also have the financial accounts in the budgetary position. So now that's set, you specify date range, and you have a planned amount, etc. I'm going to make a modification to this, actually, because we are not in 2020. I'm going to make this 2019. I'm just going to actually create a brand new one, make it easier for us all together. 2019 budget. We'll make this 0101 2019 and 1231 2019. First one is the income. Make this 1231. And so the planned amount for my income, I'm going to make it the 50K I mentioned. And in this line item, I'm going to do an analytic account instead, administrative. And it's going to be negative 35. So let's save and confirm this. So you'll notice a few things. The period that I specified here is for the whole budget. Again, you can choose incremental budgets there. Now the planned amount is important because now what you see here is a practical and theoretical. The practical amount is what you actually hit based on transactions, journal entries, invoices, etc., vendor bills. And so it's calculating whatever I hit for the income account. If you recall, in the budgetary position, I have specified specifically the product sales accounts. So for the year of 2019, from January 1st, December 31st, I've hit my income account, my sales account for $10,495. So it keeps track of that. And I have hit the administrative account, the analytic account, 0 times. The theoretical amount. So based on where we are in the year, so right now it is July 11th. Theoretically, from January 1st, December 31st, considering where we are now, we should have hit $26,000 worth of sales income. That's what Odoo calculates of what we should be at considering the time frame we specified. And the practical amount is what we have specified, so we know we are 40% of our target budget. And 0% of our administrative budget, considering where we are in the year, we should be at $18,365 in expenses there. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a budgetary position for all the accounts, the analytic accounts you want to specify, and you can make it as granular or not as you want. You can, of course, actually specify down below more than one account. So you can add an account and add as many as you want, a group of income accounts or specific income accounts, a group of expense accounts or specific expense accounts, and be as granular as you need to be. And it will all appear here in the budget. So that's how you set up budget for a company. If you have any other questions again about that, please feel free to email me. All right, how do you set up credit cards? Rosie's asking how do you credit cards for paying vendors on your accounting dashboard. Common question. So let's talk about the dashboard real quick. Each one of these rectangles is a journal. And a journal is, what I would recommend a journal be is just kind of a general ledger of specific transactions. Before we had internet, before we had software, we had these big plastic boxes with the folders in them, with the hooks in the end, and you put you organize your transactions that way. Customer invoices, vendor payments, credit cards, checks, payment, whatever you need. So each one of these rectangles here is a journal. And you can create as many journals as you want. The ones that will appear here are your sales and purchase journals, as well as your bank and cash journals. And point of sale counts as one of those. So we have our list of journals here, all of them. And typically what I would do is I'd always create an adjusting journal entry as well. Adjusting journal. Because every year you're going to need to create adjusting journal entries based on what your CPA account tells you to do. Maybe you did something correct or incorrect. So you do the same thing, just like you see with your bank accounts. You have a bank account specified, default debit and credit. You can also link it through electronic means to a automated organization, configure it. You can specify any bank that's on our list. Even credit cards, such as Capital One. See all of them here. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a journal for a credit card. However, this credit card journal is used in one instance for purchasing, not for sales. When a customer pays you with their credit card, you don't need to keep track of that here, because at the end of the day, that credit card payment goes into your bank account. So you have to reconcile your checking account with also the credit card payment method that you receive payment in. It's going to be a mess. So the credit card journal should be only for payments you make to your vendors, because you accrue a balance over time, and essentially it's going to increase over time, and then you're going to transfer funds, which is you making a payment to your credit card. So you're going to specify a credit card account here. We have bank, right? So let's do 101-402. And we do have a credit card type. Great. So what happens is you make payments. My credit card account, there's an open vendor bill. I register a payment. I will then validate this payment with the credit card. Boom, now I have a balance on my credit card. I paid for this. You can see it here. You'll see it in your balance sheet. There. So it's a liability. I've increased my debt. So now what happens is you get a credit card statement, and you can synchronize it here. So now you see the credit card journal. So you can actually create the transaction. Let's recall how much I had for that. Create my statement. Add a line. And so essentially this amount will go here. And it's a liability, so it should be positive. Save and reconcile. So now this transaction comes into place. You are reconciling a bank statement line item with the invoice you made. Now there's a more comprehensive video on bank statement reconciliations I recommend watching. I may have been the same one who did that one. So if you want to hear more of my voice, definitely watch that one. So you reconcile, because I won't go into too much detail here. And so you'll see that you can find, it will recommend the ones you can see. So this one is doing the right-hand side. So I made a mistake there with that, but we can make that fix easy. Go to the vendor bill, wood corner. Let's fix that real quick. So now you can reconcile with that vendor bill, the accounts payable that you generated there, and you're good to go. Reconciled. So now you still have a balance in that account. You need to make a payment to it. So to make a payment, you have your credit card there, balancing it all together. So you do a transfer. You do an internal transfer here, which is you pick where you're pulling it from. So I'm going to make a $1,000 payment from my bank account into my credit card. Save and confirm. Now, credit card payment has been made. And so if I were to then see that transaction in Odoo, go back to my accounting overview, go back to my statements, come here, you can make an edit, you can change it. Now that payment comes in here, my actual balance is -4. Obviously, this would be done at the same time. I'm just doing it manually. There are a few ways you can create statements. One is manually, one is import through Excel, CSV, one is through an OFX or QIF file, and last but not least is the automated synchronization. So you reconcile. Now that $1,000 transaction there is going to be matched with the transfer from the bank. So that's your payment to the credit card, and you're good to go. All right, Lorraine. I actually had a question regarding registered payments. If someone accidentally registers a payment and let's say the date is wrong or the wrong amount was registered, once validated, is there a way to cancel the payment that was applied to the client's account without it reflecting in the batch or the client's account as a full payment? So yes, Odoo does its best to be GAAP compliant. So what that means is you should not be deleting journal entries or canceling them. But to handle that, let's go through that right now. As you know, I have some customer invoices. Let's see if any are paid. They're not, but we can fix that. Registered payment. And let's change the date to the future somehow. Validate. All right, this payment is wrong. It should not be there. So how do you fix this problem? This account has been closed. The account receivable has been matched. Their debt is gone. Well, first and foremost, let's unreconcile it. Unreconciling it unmatches the payment with the invoice. That will then say the payment is open and the invoice is open. Back to open. Now that's still, that 4,610 is still there. So what do we do? Go to journal entries. We find that payment. I can group by journal to find it very quickly. There it is. So cash has been correctly debited as an asset. Receivables have been correctly credited as an asset because we reduced it. And this is wrong. This is maybe the wrong date, wrong amount. We want to fix this. Well, because we want to be GAAP compliant, we don't want to delete anything. This is why we create the adjusting journal entry journal. We reverse it. We reverse the entry. Specify a date when the reversal happens. Same day, same time if you need to. You can. This is where I would exactly do the adjusting journal entry. Now that that's been reversed, go to the journal items, find the accounts receivable. There they are. Already matched them for you, so you're good. That's exactly what you want. Because you're trying to essentially say, if you don't reverse the AR, it's open. Then you're essentially giving your customer a credit indefinitely. So as long as they're matched, it will never appear as something that's on their balance or available to them. So that's it. That's all you got to do. You're good to go. And then When you want to make the correct change, you go back to the invoice. It's still open. Register the payment for the correct time, and I'm going to do it for today because that's when it should be. Hope that answers your question, Lorraine. Mahmoud, how can I consolidate multi-company with defendant currency? So when it comes to multi-company and multi-currency, essentially what happens is Odoo you enable all the currencies you want first and foremost. Multi-currencies. Each company will have its own main currency that they operate in. USD, Euro, Canadian dollar, you name it. Now, if you have multi-companies, each company will report on their own main currency. And when you want to do a consolidated report, that's where the information will be pulled into place. Now, whenever you do a multi-currency transaction, Odoo captures the value and places it in the journal entry. Let's see what that looks like. Go to the currencies. It's hiding from me. Maybe I need to go back. Refresh. Let's see, make it easy for myself. Currencies. So I have two currencies available, USD and Euro. I'm assuming that Euro is my base currency because it's a ratio of 1. Let's confirm that. USD, USD. Let me change that to Euro. So with our multi-currency scenario, you can synchronize with several different methods, several different locations, resources. You can see them here. So okay, our main currency is USD. Fine, that works for me. So now when we go create an invoice, we come here, create an invoice, specify customer, specify the currency, change to Euro, add the product, and based on the currency conversion of that specific date and time of this transaction, it will capture it. Save, and let's validate. So validating will then you go to other information where the journal entry is hiding, jump into it, and here's what happens. You have the accounts that you want to hit, as you expect to hit. The currency in Euro will appear in the amount currency because that's where you're converting from your baseline currency to another currency. So the amount in euros will appear here and be converted into what it should be for USD. I'm not saying this is a correct conversion at this time, but that's what's being used. So that is captured in the journal entry. So now when it comes to financial reporting, consolidate between multiple companies, which we need to enable multi-companies, of course, Odoo will then, let's just do it quickly. So because I'm in one company specifically, whichever company I'm logged in as, so you just switch between them depending on what currency you want to see them in. The company I'm logged in as will display the currency as that. So we'll convert whatever it's supposed to be on the journal entry in whatever currency it is and convert it into what you are logged in as at that moment. So multi-currency is enabled. I have to make sure, well, I don't need multi-company because I didn't do anything with that really. So, but essentially, depending on what currency you're reporting in, your profit and loss balance sheet is always going to be in USD, regardless of what the transaction was in. It's going to show you the $5,000 versus the 3,000 euros. For multi-company, it's going to be the same way. It's just you're going to see the different companies and the conversions accordingly. If you want me to follow up with that, let me know. Can I download American Express transactions from our corporate account? If your corporate account allows you to download it as Excel, I assume so. That's kind of hard for me to answer without knowing. I mean, that's something on your end. So you definitely would need to check in with your corporate account to see if you can easily export that. But if the question is, can you synchronize with your American Express corporate account? That depends, I guess, on whether or not Yodlee or Plaid, who are two providers who enable us to do this. So all these are the ones that are available to us. And if it's not there, or if you don't see it, then it's something that is specifically Yodlee or Play specific. And I'm not able to help answer that question further. May, how do you format the printing checks? Our checks don't line up correctly. Great question. That depends on your version, May, because in version 12, we've officially made it a standardized check format. And so it's available online to purchase. If you want me to send you the link, email me directly, rsh@odoo.com, and I'll send you the check format that we use and recommend for everybody. We made it simple. Over the last years, we had to customize each individual one, the PDF reports, but now we have a specific check template that makes it easy for you. Just buy that in bulk, very inexpensive, and you're good to go. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, Joe, on the budget, is there a way to include sales that you have not yet been invoiced? Good question. That might require me to dive more into analytic accounts. So what my thought process is, here's how it would work. So obviously you want to start with the sale, not the invoice, because there's two ways of looking at it. What an analytic account is the way I put it, is a net. A transaction on one end, and then you have the statements. And the analytic account is in the middle, captures the information. So as you validate an invoice, vendor bills, it creates journal entries, which impact your financial statements. Now, on the journal entries, you specify analytic accounts. These are for dynamic, more ways to report than outside of what's in the financial statement. And each time that happens, it creates an analytic item. Just like a journal item, a debit and credit on a journal entry, you get transactions here. I don't want to go too deep into testing mode, just because we have other viewers, but what I would need to do after this essentially is confirm if an analytic entry is posted, I believe it may, before an invoice is created. Because if that's so, then theoretically yes. And so what we do is on the sales order, we would create a quotation, assign analytic account. Do I have it even enabled? I do. Specify customer first, specify the analytic account. Let's see what we have here. Oops. We can just let's create a new one called sales. And so essentially you put the product here that you want. Save and close, confirm. And we can test it. I can test it very quickly now. See if it creates a journal item, an analytic item for that, $29.50. Doesn't look like it. So an invoice has to be generated for that to happen. Because now I can show you very quickly. I need to deliver very quickly because it's this type. So it looks like that's a no for this time being, but let me just confirm. Because I think it's all based on the actual financial account, the accounting aspect. Because now if I go back to the analytic items, it's there. Sales. So no, unfortunately not at this time. How do you run monthly budget reports? Well, so I guess it depends on what you mean by a budget report. So for instance, when I look at this and I have the month specified here, this is a report more or less. I can see for my month of January to January 1st to January 31st, I'm at what percentage. Now, if you're looking at from a financial report standpoint on the profit and loss or balance sheet, at this time, I do not believe we have that capability standard. Doesn't mean it can't be developed and customized for you specifically to display a comparison between what is actuals versus budgeted. Doable through development, but not standard feature at this time. Definitely sent some feedback, I believe, some time ago to our R&D team for that. All right, Meg. Also, can you import previous bank statements if you can only download as PDF from bank? So you can't import statements as PDFs. So they need to be Excel. However, I do believe there's software out there that allows you to take a PDF and convert it into an Excel document. To be verified, in which case then you could do that. Now the question I would have it for you though from an implementation standpoint is that really necessary? Because I've seen implementations where a client wanted to do 6 months back of bank statement reconciliations, and that was just a nightmare because you need to have all the journal entries in the system, all the bank statement lines in the system, and match and figure out which ones are which. You're better off starting today from scratch with your new transactions and then do the bank statement reconciliation from then forward. And if you're using QuickBooks, I know that they do like a year of read-only mode that you can install locally, but you can also export to Excel and keep somewhere on hand. But from an implementation standpoint, it's very complex and takes a lot of time. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, how to manage accrual basis expenses. I guess that would depend on what you mean by expenses. So for instance, I mean, Odoo on standard does accrual-based accounting. You create a vendor bill and you have an expense here specified. You're buying something, a bunch of whiteboard pens. So now when I validate, my accounts payable is hit, therefore accruing debt, and that's my expense is accrued. Now, of course, for product sales, the expense is actually done on the sales side of the cost of goods sold. Now, the most common scenario will be, okay, accrued prepaid expenses for services rendered or anything of the sort, very similar. We do have a deferred revenue module or add-on that allows you to defer revenue over time period, so you can only recognize it when you actually provide the service or deliver the goods. So I guess I'd need to learn more about what specifically you're talking about when it comes to those accrued expenses. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any at the moment, so I can continue going over the general setup of accounting until I see more questions come up. So continuing on the setup, you set up your bank account. Very much like you did with the credit card, that's where you would have the bank account set up. Where if I go to configuration and bank accounts, you create the account here. Now, filling all this information in is going to be identical to what I did earlier. It's just a different UI, different menu item to make it easier for you to set it up in a way that makes most sense. Because if I were to create a new journal, let's just create a bank account. Specify the bank account, you can always fit all this information in, yada, yada, yada. Save. This is going to do two things at the same time. Well, three. It's created this record here. It's also going to create a balance sheet account. You see right there. It created it for you. And it's going to do one last thing, create a journal. So instead of having to go to two, three different menu items to create the account, or I guess two different menu items, create the account and the journal, you can do that all in one place with the bank accounts. So very simple, nothing really too complex there. Fiscal year, of course you set up your fiscal year, what the end year date is, and of course you don't have to be calendar, you can be fiscal, so you can pick however you want. And then you have your chart of accounts, which I showed you was pretty easy. Once you do that, you're actually ready to go with accounting. You could go live from day one. Pretty straightforward. So this will be your bread and butter. You come in here every day, see all the invoices that you need to update, whether they're unpaid or not, you need to follow through. Got some questions. All right, what do you suggest for day opening and closing funds operations? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I'm assuming maybe opening entry or closing entries per period. Hopefully that's what you mean. And if not, please send an update, and I'm just going to go in the direction of opening entries or closing entries when it comes to periods. An opening period, straightforward from an implementation standpoint. First and foremost, you set up your chart of accounts, get that up and running. And now you want to do your opening balance journal entry for your assets, liabilities, equity, expenses, income, because you may be starting at the beginning of the year, but you also may be starting in the middle of the year. So you'll create a journal entry hitting all the accounts you want. This is where you could use the adjusting journal entry journal or what have you, all the income, expenses, etc., etc., and their corresponding debit and credit balances for that time period. Now, what I wouldn't do though is accounts receivable, accounts payable, specifically because if you have open AR, if you have accounts receivable or accounts payable, that means they're open. So you'd want to create an invoice for them first. You can either import them in or you can manually create them. And what's going to happen is it's going to create the income account, the expense account, the receivable account, and make sure those balances are already there. Same thing with the vendor bill. So what's going to end up happening then is if you hit AR again in the opening entry, you're going to double it. You can hit income again, you're going to double it, which is not what you want. That's overstated. So you're going to essentially set up a scenario where you have an Excel document with the balance of what you have in your currently existing system with what you have in Odoo that you created with the invoices. And then, I see your response here daily. I'll continue my train of thought and then go back. And then you have the difference between those two columns is what you need to post into Odoo. So that's what you don't put in the book. So I guess you daily. So I guess if you're closing your books daily, I guess it depends on what you mean. I mean, yearly you move balances from one year to the next. Balance sheet accounts stay, income and expense accounts go away, go into equity. If you want to lock a period so no one can post any entries after that date, well then that's when you come here and just lock it. So I guess I may need more information or clarity on what you mean by opening and closing fund operations. Unless you're talking about like fund accounting, in which case I'm not particularly well versed in that one. How to check invoices analysis for different currencies in single currency to check how much invoices created in total. You have some draft invoices that need to be counted too, so journal entries will not work. Let's see. How to check invoice analysis for different currencies, invoice, single currency to check how much. Okay. Good question. So we have an invoice analysis. I think is that here? Invoices. So you have invoice analysis here about what's going on. Here's a graph view, and of course you have the pivot view. Well, first and foremost, if Odoo lets us, I haven't looked into this too much. If there's a filter for unposted journal entries, then that might solve your answer or solve your problem. But if we can't do unposted here, then there's not much I can do outside of going to customers, invoices, and doing it from here. Let's create. So an unposted invoice is a non-validated invoice. Draft. I'm going to make a quick change, make it easy. Can't type very quickly. Yada, yada, yada. So I'm here, I go to pivot, measures. Let's do partner. So it does show unposted invoices here. So then from here you'd want to go into maybe add a filter to show draft and open. So you only see that, and then you can go by month. So you know over time what's going on. Now it's probably going to show in current currency, company currency. So I think that might answer your question about fully. Let me read it one more time. How much money in checks do you have at the opening? Oh, sorry. How to check invoice analysis for different currency invoice. Okay, so this would be the answer, I believe, if I understand your question correctly. How to check invoice analysis for different currencies, invoice in single currency. Okay, I mean this would be your answer here then. You go, instead of going to the invoice analysis report, you go to the invoices specifically. That's a good kind of segue to talk more about. Essentially, every menu item has all these different views, and all these are different reports. So you just need to know exactly what you're looking for, the business use case, what the answer is, and we can help you find exactly where you need to go. Whether it's through standard like I just did here, and hopefully this is answering your question, or we can find a way to customize it with Studio or go further and develop it if need be. How much money? Okay, so to follow up that question, all right, how much money in checks do you have at the opening of the day, and how much during closure? Something similar to a POS as was in an old version. Okay. Um, How much money in checks do you have at the beginning, opening of the day, and how much? So typically, opening and closing is only for point of sale for brick and mortar stores. Um, Let me think. The only comparisons we have are periods, which we defined as months or years. You can compare like dates wise for balance sheet perspective, but that's not going to help answer your question on a daily basis about how much cash you have in the beginning or the end. I guess I'd want to know more about the significance of this kind of report, of knowing how much money I have when I wake up in the morning, go in the office, versus how much I have at the end of the day, closed. But from a point of sale perspective, yes, when you handle cash, you want to put cash in the register. That's all going to be in the point of sale specifically, and not in accounting, because they are different applications. And I won't go too much on the point of sale. But if there is a use case specifically from a accounting perspective, I would need to further to understand more. Maybe trial balance will help. That might be your answer there. So you go to start date, end date, apply, and you're going to get on a day-to-day basis what you started with and what you ended with, initial balance, new, and you end up there. So that may answer your question when it comes to how to see on a day-to-day basis what the value of that account is. Initial balance is 102. That may be it, but I need to, I guess, dive into it further. Maybe particularly the older version stuff. I can think on it more, and if you send me an email, I can look into it further, especially if you give me more clarification on the use case. So continuing general accounting setup, I mean, once this is done, you're ready to go with accounting. You can create your invoices, or generate invoices, journal entries, vendor bills, you name it. Now, if you want more complex setup and configuration, there's the information that we saw earlier on the product categories, where you set up this information. And this is helpful so that way you can set up accounting for products as a whole as opposed to individual products. Got a new question here. Do you recommend recording credit card transactions immediately to the bank journal, or creating an intermediary journal to hold the transactions till it clears? Those kind of situations depend on, I guess, what makes most sense for you. Do you recommend recording credit card transactions immediately to the bank journal, or creating an intermediary? If it's a customer paying you with a credit card, then I guess if you want to find a way to report on how many of your clients are paying with credit cards versus cash versus check, etc., I would honestly just do that through the memo field, because memo, we could even maybe use Studio to create a field if necessary, but I'm not sure if that's required. Because when a customer pays with a credit card, either way it's going into your bank account. The only real use case for having an intermediary is when it's a credit card transaction that you're paying. Do you recommend recording credit card transactions immediately to the bank journal? Do you want to reconcile? I guess if you're paying vendor bills with a credit card, yes, just because you'd want to do a bank statement reconciliation. Because sometimes what happens, I guess it also depends on the bank or the credit card company you're using. Because oftentimes it'll do one of two things. Either A, they will lump sum all the credit card transactions and put it into your bank account. So if it's one lump sum, how are you reconciling that with transactions that you paid off in your end for bank statement purposes, which invoices or vendor bills you pay with credit card or not? Or does the bank hit your account, or the credit card hit your bank account on a per transaction basis, in which case you don't need necessarily a credit card intermediary? But I guess that there's a lot more questions that we could be asked there, depending on how things are done with you. All right. So now that you have your basic chart of accounts set up, your journals, your bank accounts, You have your product set up with the right accounts. You have your vendors and customers set up. Hopefully you don't change too much, because then it's really easy that you have the AP specified here. Odoo makes it very easy for you. So essentially what happens on a workflow perspective, picking the customer determines the AR, picking the vendor determines the AP. You may have a use case where an AR AP is different for customer segment or vendor segment. And then you specify the product, because the product will then dictate. You'll notice that the product is not required. It's not bold or underlined, but the sales income account or the description is. But by specifying the product, you specify the description and the correct account. So maybe if you sell a service account will be specified on that, in which case you'll apply and you'll be good to go. So that's an easy way to set up information here. What else to think about? A few other items that we have as features and functionality. Budgets, as we talked about. Asset management, this will be depreciation. So cumulative depreciation, you'll need to create an asset category here. So what kind of depreciation, what kind of product is it? Is it a equipment? Is it a tool? Is it a building? Is it a vehicle? All those will be depreciated at different rates. Odoo specifically does linear or digressive, but not double declining balance, unless I'm mistaken there. So you specify equipment. The journal, I'd probably create a depreciation journal, cumulative depreciation journal maybe. And so you specify the correct accounts. So let's do that right while I'm here. We have time. Now, this actually raises a good question. When should you specify a default debit and credit on a journal? In this case, I wouldn't at all. I'm going to discard this for now. We have all these journals here. Some require and need a default debit and credit, while others do not. The ones that do not are the ones that, like I showed you, when I create an invoice. So we have 5 minutes left. If you have any questions, shoot them to me now, or you can email me at rsh@odoo.com, and I'll happily answer them later, where I have more time to do so. So creating an invoice, you specify the customer. That tells Odoo what AR or AP to hit, as I mentioned. Specifying the product specifies the income or expense account, cost of goods sold in that case, or and the tax determines what account is going to be hit there. So if I validate this just by telling the customer and the product and the tax, the correct journal entry is posted. Odoo knows what to do. What journal needs an account there? I'll show you right now. Register payment. The first thing you do, you'll notice there's no customer or vendor specified here. That's because Odoo assumes that because you're registering payment on the record, the invoice specifically, to pull that one. The journal is what determines the next step, what account you're hitting, whether it's your credit card, cash, Wells Fargo, bank, you name it. And that's where it's required. Validate, look at the journal entry here. The correct debit of the asset and the credit of the other asset, your receivable. So that's a long way of telling you the journal type that require it are typically bank and cash. That's usually about it. So you shouldn't need a default debit credit anywhere else. All right, we have another question. Is there a way to show the value of a specific warehouse if I have multiple warehouses? So I'm assuming you're talking about the inventory valuation of what you have. So to get a value in the valuation of a product, you specify on the category what type of costing method. Is it standard, first out, automated or not? And as you buy and sell, your inventory will go up and down, and the cost associated with those products will be kept in Odoo. So now it's in Odoo, reporting inventory valuation. You're going to see the inventory of all your products as a whole. Now, can I do this by warehouse? I believe because of the way we've refactored inventory in the latest version 12, maybe version 11, I forget when. No. So it's because, at least not, I gotta think about that one more, because in the past we had quants, and quants held the value of that specific product move, and that product move was assigned to a specific source location and an end destination location. So now it's not doing it as, it's doing it as a whole, as you can see here. It's not splitting up based on lot numbers or serial numbers or specific receipts. So we would probably need to do developments where the cost of that specific product is kept not on the, I need to confirm what this is. No. What is this? Float. I need to get back to that in more detail. It's definitely customization or development. I would need to show you how to, or figure out how to do that. I may be mistaken. Okay. Can Odoo accommodate 100% depreciation in the same year? Our physical assets are minimal and we write them off all in the same year. Well, if you're doing 100% depreciation, so the assets module settings is designed to generate the periodic journal entries to hit depreciation, or accumulate depreciation and depreciation expense, to segment it out over a period. If you're doing 100% depreciation, well then you might as well just do a journal entry. I guess the question I need to understand more, are you doing it over the course of the year? So it's only 1 year depreciation, you're doing it every month, or you're doing it every day, or do you just want to, when you buy it, 100% depreciation? In which case, just create a journal entry for depreciation expense. Accumulate depreciation, depreciation expense, and you're good to go. Alternatively, when it comes to the assets, you'll just create an asset type where the number of entries is 12, 1 entry every 1 month, and there's an ending date. There you go. Or just number of entries. Number of entries is 12, 1 entry every month. That is your yearly depreciation. And it's done at the end of the year. So you buy it for $12,000 every month, depreciation expense of $1,000, and accumulated depreciation of $1,000. I believe that might answer your question. If not, again, rsh@odoo.com for any and all questions. I'm happy to answer them. I believe that is all the time we have. Is this correct?
Yes. Thank you, Richard, for
My pleasure.
Taking a bunch of account questions for all of us. Thank you all for tuning in and for sending us your questions. As mentioned and shown, his email address is rsh@odoo.com. Additionally, you can reach out to us. We are at webinars@odoo.com, and that way, your general sort of first point of contact, I guess, for getting in touch with us. I would also like to remind everybody that we are currently in the midst of our Odoo 12 tour. We have events happening all around the country and all around the world. So if you'd like to get more information on that, we recommend you visit our website. We are at odoo.com/events. Richard, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
In particular, counting is complex in general, so keep.
Exactly. There's forget, Odoo Experience is coming up. That is our big flagship event that we host in Belgium. However, this year we're having our first ever American event. It is known as Odoo Connect. That you can also get more information on that on our website. Once again, it is at odoo.com/events, or again, send us an email, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as best that we can. So I believe that is, right at noon here in Pacific time. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you all next time.